less. Would you advise intending couples that are about to get married as a rule to go for a properly structured premarital counseling? And what would your advice be in terms of divorce? Should that be like the last resort, or should that be something that you immediately say, listen, we're just 6 months into this marriage, as opposed to 5 years of touch and go, where we figure it out and where it might work or it might not work? Or would you advise, listen, once the 6 months and you think I can't hack it, go for divorce? Or would you say go for the long haul and try to figure it out? So I think two questions. And then Ayola Fadeya would unmute your mic after so you can ask your questions.
Should we answer this one first?
Yes, please.
Okay. Do you want to go or I go? Yeah.
You go first.
Okay.
I'll
So the first question is this, like marriages that don't last, people are very quick to dish out, use the divorce word. Well, like me, I don't know, not too many people are as bad as I was to say it within 2 weeks. But, I think not so many have been privileged enough to see marriages that have worked or a model relationship that they can use as a reference and, then have certain expectations, whether realistic or not. But I would say, we are not as patient as before, and then a lot of us are more economically stronger and so feel that independence because of financial security. And sometimes that's one of the reasons why people stay in relationships, because they feel trapped. Yes, a lot of women are also very quick to say they are ready to walk out on a relationship. I don't know the statistics, whether it's men or women, more than the other. However, I think the biggest challenge I see more than anything is the premarital stage. I feel we don't spend enough time doing the right things, doing enough of the investigation, being patient enough, and to separate that emotion of love with reality. Most people that Saeed and I counsel, when we ask them, this thing you're talking about now, did you see no warning signs? I'd say 95% of the time there were warning signs, which they ignored. Often they were too in love, or they felt they could fix it afterwards, which for those who have gone through it will tell you it's almost impossible to change another human being. So it's one of the biggest concerns, and definitely premarital counseling is extremely critical. What I love about the system that the Catholics and the Christians have is that they do make sure before you are wedded, you go through the premarital. Like, the pastor is not going to marry you unless you've gone through this. We haven't streamlined and centralized this to make it part of the policy that no imam should marry someone who hasn't gone through. Then the other thing is, who is the one to do the counseling? Again, we don't really have qualified people, because sometimes the advice they will give is misguided. Quotes could be taken out of context from the scriptures and used to make favor one over another. And there is no balance, and that's not what marriage is about. I mean, marriage is really about give and take. It's about equally depositing and then reaping the fruits of your labor. So if you ask me, a lot of the marriages that aren't lasting is because we didn't do enough homework. Yes, our parents were more patient, but it doesn't mean they were happy. And that's just one of the realities. Just because they didn't complain to us doesn't mean they were happily married. And if we're going to be honest, some of us can think back and say, yes, I could tell that my father was miserable based on how my mother treated her, or vice versa. And so we run away from looking at the truth and facing it head on to say, you know what, like we say often these days, sometimes our parents get it wrong. And unfortunately, they are the models. They're the ones we look up to. It's what they do that we often will replicate in our homes. Many who are relating with their spouses today are doing exactly what they saw, whether it was good, bad, or ugly. So we need to recognize and be able to admit the truth and the reality, and understand that marriage is about hard work, but hard work by both. It's about commitment by both. It's about equally depositing, equally putting in, and it's mutual completely?
What I'd like to add to that is, first and foremost, there is a generational difference between our parents' time and this generation. And in those days, there's a stigma to getting divorced. But let me just take a step back and say divorce is one of those things that Allah has permitted, which He detests the most. And when we talk about premarital, which in the olden days people would sit and talk to you, though not as we are working on doing now, it is essential that we recognize that there's this generational difference. And this generation has this desire for instant gratification. And the moment things are not going well for them, be this internet generation, this thumbs up generation, this number of likes generation, we don't have the patience to go through the process to grow together. And this is something we want this generation to understand. When during courtship, when you're courting one another, there are fundamental questions that need to be asked. One of which, when we ask couples, is what are your expectations in marriage? And once you are able to define that, and both of you are on the same page, whatever shortcomings exist or you have, you will work very hard in being patient and working with one another to overcome it. Yeah. Maryam asked for divorce, I think, within the first
2 weeks.
No, I'm saying how many times she's asked for divorce.
It was the third time you said if I
yeah, it was after the third time I told her if she did mention it one more time, I'll grant her her wish. And then that was, I think, the first time parents came into the discussion. But she was a very hot-tempered, hot-headed young girl. And it's one of those things that we need to understand. There's a quote by Michelle Obama, which she says, when they're up, we should come down. Couples should really imbibe that. When one person is angry because of the ego, the pride, the families we come from, Maryam talked about financial independence. We are rich or we're educated, and we feel we can just walk away and get another partner. Mm-hmm. It's a very devastating thing when you actually file for divorce and you do get divorced. No matter how one thinks about
it's traumatizing.
It is traumatizing, and there's a sense of failure associated with it. Yeah. But to avoid it is what we are talking about now. Enough discussions, enough investigations, and then the final thing, which is committing this to Allah through istihara, asking Allah to show you or guide you if this is what is best for both of you, if this is what is best for both your families, and ultimately, if this is what is best for the ummah.
And some people, sorry to cut you short, will say, oh, I did the istihara and I didn't really feel it or whatever. The thing is, what signs are you looking for? And have you already made up your mind? Because that's also another big issue. Yeah. You are asking Allah to guide you, and He's showing you warning signs. You're ignoring, and then later on you say, oh, I did istihara, and yet look at the this thing I got married to, and so on.
Oftentimes the istihara we do is, Allah, I want her, make it possible. Yes. It's not exactly. Allah, I want her, but if she is not the best for me, replace her with somebody better. And the women should do the same when it comes to the men. But there has to be real commitment, because one of the things that both our families went through is the istihara. Both our families, her dad and the family, my father and our family did that. And both sides came out and said, based on everything we've seen, this is a go. So may Allah put His barakah in it. May Allah bless the union. And alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. I have so many follow-on questions, but I don't want to hog all the time. Ayola Fade, I'm going to unmute your mic now. So if you can ask your questions. If you want to, you can turn on your video as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Thank you to the facilitators, Mr. Mrs. Lemu. So my question is, where you went to the aunt of your in-law, your wife to be, told you about negative parts of your to-be wife then, and you took those in and you were able to prepare your mind. But these days it's very rare for one to find people that can really say it as it is. So what do you advise young couples? How should they go about asking those very real questions? And how do you expect them to cope with those negative parts once they are in? So, and then I think the fact that you already made up your mind that you wouldn't divorce Ajia really made you resisted attempt, your questioning a request. So would you say that, would you advise young ones to couples to be that they should also have that thought that whatever it is, I wouldn't divorce my wife or my husband? Thank you very much.
Ayola, thank you very much for that question. I grew up in a polygamy and I witnessed a few divorces. And one of the things I kept asking my father was to distinguish between what is tradition and what is religion. I made it a point to understand the rights and obligations of husbands and wives very early in the going. And even during courtship, I tried to make Maryam understand what her rights are in a marriage. And I want to appeal to all the brothers that are watching today. One of the obligations of a husband to a wife, and one of the rights of the wife over the husband, is knowledge, is for him to give her knowledge once she leaves her father's home. I took that very seriously, and that information, that education was what guided me in reaching the decision that I reached, even after her aunt told me about these things, because I recognize that I have work to do. I am responsible. And that responsibility, Ayola, is an act of ibadah. It's not a choice. So taking on that responsibility of knowing the rights and obligations for both of us, making sure she knows what her rights are, and she knows what my rights are, and she knows what my responsibilities are, and she knows hers. And the reason being, in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah says, she is my garment and I am hers. When you go into a marriage, understand, it's not the marriage that is fulfilling half your faith. It is fulfilling those rights and responsibilities that is fulfilling half your faith. Those are acts of ibadah. They're not choices. You don't pick and choose. You do what you're supposed to do. Now, if both of you are knowledgeable about those rights, about the importance of marriage, and both of you are a team working towards that, you have to be willing to overlook each other's shortcomings and forgive, and make sure both of you are growing in learning what not to do to displease the other and what to do to please the other. But both of you are doing that towards pleasing Allah. It is Allah first. Now, there's a point you made about families not being sincere. They will account to Allah, Ayola, because if they want the marriage to succeed, why hide somebody's bad habits that will eventually come to surface and will lead to the breakdown of the marriage? Why not tell them, prepare them, and say, you need to work on this? That woman did me a wonderful favor. It wasn't that I decided sitting in front of her that I wasn't going to divorce, even though she asked me to promise. I went into the marriage to make it work. And I understood what the potential challenges will be. So my mindset was already there. So it's important for the men in particular. We are the ones that Allah said are a degree above our wives. But let me say this. Wallahi, when you read their rights, you'll be fearful, because the wives seem to have even more rights than the men do. And I urge you, brothers, to know these rights and responsibilities, because ultimately it's about accountability to Allah.
Yeah, sorry, I know we shouldn't drag each question. I just want to quickly add to this, because I feel really this is so important. That premarital, I'll spend a few more seconds talking about it. I think the question was, what advice would you give someone if the family doesn't volunteer? Due to how critical the premarital stage is, there is no timeline in how long it takes you to court to investigate long enough. During the investigation, make sure Allah puts His barakah in the entire process. So I always say no tasting, no feeling to see how it, what it feels like or whatever. Keep it halal throughout. Make sure there's a third party. My dad always said, never allow shaitan to be the third in the room when the two of us were courting. So we always courted in the living room of either my house, our house, or his sister's house during that period. Now, during that period, it's so important you do ask the right questions. Sometimes a person, only Allah knows best what their motive is to get married, but if they genuinely want to get married for the right reasons, then if you ask, hopefully they'll give you the right answer. Questions like, what makes you happy? What would you say are your bad habits or your weaknesses? What are your greatest strengths? What do you do when you are angry? What would you prefer? Make sure the answers they give are things you know you can do, so that you don't go in and you're doing something they don't like. So discuss all this beforehand. Talk about baggage. I have a premarital course that I'm just wrapping up, and part of the questions I ask is, are there experiences, are there scars of unhealed wounds that you're carrying that are going to manifest themselves in the relationship, because we see it happen? Saeed has shared this in recent lectures where I did not understand why I considered him to be a ticking time bomb. He was super sensitive. A small thing will get him really, really mad and really upset, and he would just shut down on me. And then I would push to try and find out, like, what did I say? Come, let's talk about it. And he wouldn't. He would just completely block me out, and it took a lot to finally get him to come to the table to talk. Now, I had no idea that there was some issues and baggage that he was carrying that were weighing him down. And it took us years for me first to establish trust, for him to be able to be comfortable enough to confide and tell me, this is what I went through, this is why I'm so angry and bitter, and then we could now start the healing process. So you do need to talk about the past, and you may also have your own baggage that you're carrying, things that you've experienced. Some could be sexual abuse, some could be physical abuse you witnessed in your parents' relationship, because some people watch their parents fight. And so your experiences, maybe your spouse does something to you which in your mind looks familiar, looks like something you saw in your parents' relationship, and you overreact. And
she becomes the enemy, or he becomes the
enemy. Your spouse suddenly looks like the person who, or the things you saw that you resented, and then you turn, you block them as well. So baggage is such an important thing to talk about, excess baggage. And then share expectations. How do you see an ideal relationship? How do you see yourselves relating, sharing money, raising children? Talk about discipline. Folks, it does not matter if it takes you 1 year or 3 or 5 years to court. What's important is you need to check off all the boxes that you are okay. Make sure there are things based on principles and values, not shishifufu stuff, but the crux of the issue, what the marriage is meant to be built on. So let me just stop at that point.
Thank you so much. One thing that I've noticed in a lot of young marriages that I've seen, or the people that I've spoken to, is like the things that we see in our parents' marriage that we say, wallahi, like I'd never want to do this, and try to run away from it. But in trying to run away from it, we get so fixated on it that we create a similar, but in reality, a similar situation, but it looks different, where we end up recreating that reality for ourselves, which is...
Yeah, we talk about create your own marriage culture early on. Don't do copy and paste. Their system may not have worked. It's just what you perceived to have worked. Like, I didn't know my parents did fight, but because my mother could not stand confrontation, if she was upset with my dad, would write him a letter. And because he's actually a very, very sensitive person, he didn't like seeing her upset. So he would sit with her and they would talk or respond to her in writing. But you see, that's the behind the scenes stuff that, we go with our perceptions. But it's so important that we don't make the mistake of just thinking, oh, our parents' relationships were perfect, or whoever raised us. Sometimes it could be certain relatives, and say we want to. Like today, the biggest problem we see is many people are watching social media marriages and thinking that's the ideal couple,
yes.
you know, an ideal life, ideal house, ideal number of children, and way to dress. And unfortunately, the moment you start to compare, well, you have missed truth. You have to create your own unique culture.
Ibrahim, can I just add quickly the issue you raised about growing up seeing what you see and then promising yourself you're not going to repeat that. I had the opportunity to ask my father a lot of questions about what I saw growing up, and he had the accommodating nature to tell me that some of the things I see is not according to the teachings in the Holy Quran or the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I started telling myself early that I would not replicate what I grew up seeing. But even after the marriage, when we started having the problems, Ibrahim, one of the reasons why we delayed having children was I told Maryam that I realized I still have a lot of skeletons in my cupboard that I needed to clean out. Now, that took me 3 years. And what did I do? I took a journey into the self. It was like a second journey of self-discovery, trying to address the baggage that Maryam talked about. And when you don't resolve these issues, they have a terrible way of rearing their ugly heads at the most inopportune time, like Maryam was talking about. So when we see things that are not proper, as much as we love our parents, there's advice I give everybody. First and foremost, you pray to Allah to forgive them for their shortcomings, because they're not perfect. And you also acknowledge and realize you're not perfect either. You have the potential to make a lot of mistakes. And when husbands and wives, young husbands and wives realize that I'm not perfect, and just because I bring an idea from our house doesn't make it right. And just because she brings an idea from their house doesn't make it wrong. I need to listen to what she has to say. And then along the way, as you pray to Allah to forgive our parents for their shortcomings, we pray for each other to Allah to guide us to do the right thing for one another, and ultimately to do right by our children, inshallah.
Inshallah, may Allah make it easy. So I have a big favor to ask of both of you.
Sorry, could you increase the volume a bit? So sorry.
I'm sorry. I thought I was gonna get the headphones, but I didn't. I have a big favor to ask on behalf of the Tahara Collective. Inshallah, please, would you be able to make out time for this again? So the meeting
has ended.
No, it hasn't ended. It's unlimited, but we have a participant restriction, and there are a ton of people that are trying to get in but unable to get in. So inshallah, if you'll be able to, but in a webinar, so that we can have as many people as possible, because I feel like I just saw a message from somebody saying that they feel disenfranchised, that they're unable to come in to the session.
My phone has not stopped sending messages and phone calls that we can't get in, and you sent us this flyer on your page.
I'm sorry.
Not a problem, Ibrahim. It would be a pleasure.
It to be interactive, so inshallah we would come back to you to find out your availability, so that we can do this, because it's apt. It's, you know, a lot of people are trying to get in because this is a session that's now more than ever a lot of us need. So inshallah, thank you so much for accepting. We'll come back to ask when you want to.
No problem.
I'm gonna unmute Mohammed. It says Mohammed's iPhone, and then you can go ahead to ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Hey, I don't know if you're driving or if this is a wallpaper.
It's a wallpaper.
Okay.
It's a wallpaper. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon to the host and the co-host.
You're back on mute, so we can't hear. We can see you on your car, but we can't hear you.
Oh no! Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I said my question goes out to you. That will be later, and to Maryam and her husband. Now, she said something that is very, very important to me. My fiance, inshallah, she's also the kind of person that is very reserved. Where the point in time she'll just lock up, and I'll be so upset. I'll be running up and down, and I'll be like, "What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong?" And she'll never tell you. You understand? Sometimes you find out yourself, and that really gets to me. I sat her down and asked her, "See,
Muhammad, you're muted again. Brother Muhammad, you're muted.
hello, assalamu alaikum. I'm unmuted now, right?"
Yeah.
Okay, so she's like she always shuts down just like a husband, and I'll be so upset and like, "What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?" And you never get a correct answer. So what I'm really afraid. I'm really afraid of going into something like this, and it really gets to me. I'm very emotional and sensitive like that. And the last question, not to take you guys too much time, is brother, that's a very horrible choice of jersey, brother Ibrahim. Of all the jerseys you picked, that's a very horrible choice of jerseys. Thank you very much.
Is that what concerns you now? You're going to get married.
Yeah.
I wanted myself why I'm Arsenal fan. Eh? I wanted myself.
Okay, I thought that this was a friendly. I thought that this was a friendly room. Just haters everywhere.
Yeah. Okay, Mohammed, are you done with your question?
Yes, I'm done, sir. I'm done, sir.
So before you go ahead to answer Mohammed's question, we're considering sharing a webinar link, and that we can share that on chat, and everybody can redial in, just so that we can get as many people as possible
Right now?
in. With your permission, of course, if you think that that's
okay, we don't mind at all. I'm just wondering if those who thought they can no longer come in have just gone to continue their day since they booked this time.
No, if you're saying it now, but
yeah, because they have no access.
Okay. What do you think, Ibrahim? It's either you do that now or we reschedule another one, whichever one is.
I think they may need time, because by now, looking at the time, it's about 5:15. Many probably have just figured they've missed this opportunity and have gone on with their day. But it's your show.
You make the decision. Yeah. Make the decision. We're open.
Okay, we'll continue with this, and we'll do a webinar another day.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Mohammed, your question about the brooding.
Yes.
Each situation is unique.
Yeah.
So I don't think what applied to us would apply to you. One of the challenges I had about not talking when Maryam was talking was she said several times her mouth was a weapon of mass destruction. And when Maryam would talk when we were fighting, you don't want to answer her back because the words were so infuriating. So the best thing for me at the time was to just keep quiet, not respond, because I didn't want it to escalate. But what I've come to understand, all of us, we are the sum of our experiences. What I would like or recommend you do with your fiance is, when she's not upset, to have a conversation and ask her if her experience growing up, when there's a misunderstanding, maybe that's how one of the parents tended to handle that situation. And to tell her that it would be in your interest, both of you, that she changes that culture and that approach. One of the key ingredients for successful marriage is effective communication. And by effective communication, you have to let your spouse know what's bothering you. and in a most tactful, most respectful, most courteous and manner, not to insult, denigrate, or put them down.
Yeah.
So they hear what's bothering you, and then they can respond to it. But oftentimes, Mohammed, when you see these things happen in the relationship, it's what we grew up seeing, and that's what Ibrahim talked about not doing it. But you have to recognize that you are doing it. That's one of the most critical aspects of a successful marriage. You have to know that you're doing certain things that's affecting the relationship or the ability for both of you to communicate in the best way.
Yeah, I think probably Muhammad, she has become the way she is based on an experience.
Yeah.
And sometimes self-esteem is an issue. I don't know her, I'm just shooting in the dark here based on the years of experience we've had counseling. Sometimes she may have had labels. I remember our youngest son he does short motivational talks, and one of the things he talked about was how labels given to you by your loved ones can sometimes stick. And form your character.
Yeah.
And he was called antisocial when he was young by a lot of people. I was guilty of those because he was very shy. He didn't want to be in the midst of family members, even the wider family. And so they would call him boring. They would say, he's not friendly. And I didn't help matters. I would say, oh no, just leave him alone. He's more antisocial. And that made him more antisocial.
Yeah.
He went into a bigger shell. It could be something just like that. And all she needs is more of a boost of self-confidence. Instead of getting angry, I think it's better to seek to understand and go down to the root cause of what has formed this. Alhamdulillah for us, he found his voice. I was able to figure out that I also got it wrong, and I truly apologize.
I got it right.
He got it right. Thanks for pointing that out. But I apologize to him, and alhamdulillah, I've become like his biggest cheerleader now.
Yeah.
And he's, standing on a bigger platform, confident on stage with no inhibition, so to speak. So I think it's more support.
Yeah.
And you may be able to redirect what you are seeing now and be able to help her. If it's a bad experience, she may be able to heal and let her know you've got her back, that you are there to support her through the journey of trying to get out of whatever it is that makes her shut down on you.
I want to say this very quickly, please, for both men and women.
Yeah.
When potential spouses confide in you, confidentiality
Is key.
is key. It is very, very crucial.
Yeah.
You do not at any time, even when you're upset, go back to what they said to you in confidence at their most vulnerable moment, and you use it against them, whether it is the wife to the husband or the husband to the wife. So when we're talking about people confiding in you, telling you what their experiences are, please create the environment for them to know this is an amana and it is something I will hold in trust, never to share with others and never to use it against you when we're having a misunderstanding. This is very important.
Thank you. Before I go to the next person, so my question is, how do we get our spouse to be on the same page as us when it's time to seek help? So my wife and I were lucky that we had someone like Imam Jibril Saba who organized the premarital counseling, and it was very robust, and it helped us. We've been friends for about a decade, and there are things that it became like an eye opener. It's like, oh, okay, so this is how to fix this thing that I've been dealing with for a long time. And I had like cousins and wives of cousins that then heard that, oh, that I did premarital counseling, which was strange. And all of them came to me and they're like, can you talk to your cousin so that we can get marital counseling? Because he says that I'm the only one that needs the counseling. And so my question is, how do we get to a point where we can talk to our significant other, and how can we have that conversation with them so that they understand that it's not seeking help to make them look bad as much as it's seeking help to fix whatever the problem is. And then I would unlock, and then I will unmute somebody else's mic so that they can ask a follow-on question.
In the fifth or sixth year of our marriage, when we keep having these peaks and valleys, passion and disgust, love and hate, and so on and so forth, Maryam got an idea. And the idea was, she came to me and said, can you please tell me what you like about me that you want me to continue doing, what you don't like about me that you want me to stop doing, and what are those things that I'm not doing now that you'd like me to start doing? But she said, the only thing I would ask of you is to be kind and merciful, not to denigrate, mock, or make a jest of me. And as I was saying that, she was taking notes. Ibrahim, sometimes verbal communication can be very difficult because we're sensitive and we can be emotional. But when we did it that way, and she gave me this chance to tell her these things, I felt obligated to return the favor. So I was like, wow, if she's giving me this opportunity, I should give her the same opportunity. And I had to muster the courage. And the reason being, all the brothers here know, African men with our ego and our pride, who wants to open himself up to be, criticized, dissected by his wife and say, I don't like the way you chew your food or this or that, So I gave her the same opportunity. And that was like the magic wand, to be honest. It opened the door to a lot of communication without being hurtful, without being judgmental, without being critical. All we wanted to do is to find out what would make us the best versions of ourselves, and in the process, make our marriage successful.
Yeah.
Now, if all couples would approach it with that attitude, that it's about a win-win situation. It's not about we getting into an argument and every time I have to win, she has to be subservient to me. And
I have to always be the one pointing out your flaws.
Or she has to be the one always pointing out my flaws. This is a team. And when you work in a team, somebody is saying the jersey you're wearing. People don't win unless they put their heads together. Same thing in a marriage. It's a team. It's not two separate people. It's a united team, and you work together to succeed. Yeah. I don't know what Maryam wants to add to that.
Absolutely. I think regardless of whether you've been married a few months or whether you've been married 25, 30 years, even 29 years down the line, I still ask him, Said, how can I make you happier?
Yeah.
And it's something that if your marriage really matters and you want to see the marriage thrive, not just for the marriage to work, but for it to thrive, to grow, to flourish, then you better be ready to hang your ego out of the gate and be able to make sure your spouse is pleased with you. And how do you get to know that is by asking them, how can I make you happier? What am I doing that you don't like, that you want me to stop? What am I not doing at all that you feel we should start? So that fantasies can be brought to life. They matter more than anybody else in the relationship. Our children know that we come first after Allah. And they know that if we are okay, we are happy, we get along, they will be at peace. They will be raised in a happy home with two loved ones, two parents who truly are committed to giving them the best they have to offer. But if we are so distracted because we are empty, we can't even be fair to our kids. We can't give them the love they deserve and a nurturing environment and healthy environment that they are meant to be raised in.
And we're not modeling the best version of ourselves.
And Allah will ask us about that.
That's the thing.
Because our kids are watching and we are passing on the baton to the next generation. So what are they seeing right now? And that's another question to ask. Are you comfortable with your children replicating what in their homes with their spouses and their children, what they're seeing today in the home? It's important you ask. If the answer is no, then you do need to sit at the table and talk. And like Said mentioned, that thing of please be merciful, please be kind. Don't give me feedback to break me. Let it be constructive feedback.
May Allah make it easy. I just want to say that all the haters that put on the video to laugh when Sidi Said spoke about my jersey, I saw you people.
Muhammad, you hear?
I saw you people. All the haters, I saw you people. I'm gonna unmute Sidika Salisu's mic for you to ask your question.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Good evening. I've learned a lot so far, and I really hope my question will be very straightforward. I've been thinking about how I can make it very straightforward, but I will really try so much to do this. Thank you so much, Ma. Thank you so much, sir. I listened to some of your podcasts. You're a great woman and you're a great man, sir. Thank you so much for blessing us this much. So this is my question. What if you already find yourself in a marriage where you want to be the friend and he is not interested in being a friend, and you believe okay, let me put it this way. My sister is in a marriage where she has gone through counseling before the marriage. She's been through a lot of teachings before the marriage, but due to distance, they couldn't do it together as a couple with her husband. And now she's the one trying to be the friend, trying to be the lover, being the submissive woman, but the husband does not want to be a friend. It's when he wants to be happy that the whole family should be happy. If he's not in a good mood or he doesn't want to be happy, then the whole house should be upside down. It's so painful because they're in the 6th year of marriage now. And it's something that hurts her every time. Sometimes we talk about this and she'll be crying, and I believe she is really giving her best. Sometimes I'll be like, why can't you just, okay, now there is this human part of me that wants her to get back at him, do something that'll hurt him and all that. But sometimes it can be very painful for someone who has worked so much to prepare for a marriage, to prepare, study, pray, and all that. And at the end of the day, you find yourself in that kind of situation. Ma, please, what can someone do in that kind of situation? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Very, very good question, and very apt, because sometimes and many times, I think often we find it's one partner putting in all the work, one partner investing, one partner growing, one partner attending all the workshops and seminars on marriage and on what Allah wants out of a relationship or any relationship. And, one partner ends up more like a single parent doing all the work when it comes to child upbringing. And in this case, it doesn't really matter whether they both did premarital counseling, even if they were to sit together and do it. The key thing is the question, was he like this from day one? Number one, has he always been that way, or did he change? If he wasn't like this at the beginning, then what changed? Did he change or did she change? Or were expectations unreal? Was the premarital done properly? In other words, did they ask enough questions?
She did it alone.
She did it alone. He didn't do premarital at all. Okay, I get it. But I mean, there are people who never go through premarital counseling and their marriages will work and it will thrive. So I'm not saying that's the criteria, but what I'm trying to find out is, Was he like this from the onset? Did she do enough of an investigation to find out more about him? You know, who is this, how he is? Is he moody? Does he switch on and off and have mood swings? And is happiness based on his terms, not based on the fact that there's something to be happy about and let's all celebrate? And did she change? And then there's also perception. I often tell my husband, I'm the beholder. So if you think you look good, better look in this mirror here. I'm the one to tell you if you look good, and vice versa. I care so much about what he thinks about how I look. I do a lot of self-care. You know, I try to pamper myself and make sure I'm comfortable and my mental state is very good. He gives me that space to do me time. But if I'm stepping out of the house, it's so important that he's okay with the way I look. Sometimes he'll say, girl, save that dress for me. And I get the message loud and clear. It's important that her perception of what she is doing to make him happy is a reality, that she's depositing in the right currency. Let me put it that way. Many of us think what we are doing to please our spouse is what pleases our spouse. And why I love that book, 5 Love Languages, is because it really opens your eyes to know, is what you are doing something that person wants, or are they looking for something else from you? And then, has she changed? Has she gotten to the stage where she complains more when he comes home? And unfortunately, what you focus on will be magnified. If she focuses on the negatives, it'll magnify. It doesn't mean he's not doing something negative, but I find positive redirection is a very, very powerful tool, because a lot of us, our hearts, even the Prophet ﷺ said, the heart has been created in a way that it loves those who show kindness towards it and dislike those who cause it pain. So the more I give him positive affirmation, when he does right, I make a big deal out of it. And when he does wrong, I draw his attention to it, but I don't make as big a fuss. I just let him know I'm not pleased, but I don't keep nagging on and on about it. Fortunately, I've been blessed with a man who does respond now to those things. We both respond to it. But I just want to know, and if I may just ask you, yeah, okay, you go ahead.
Sadiqa, based on what you said, first, I think the courtship was long distance. That's what I gathered out of this. And yeah, and I think she was the one that you said went to all these sessions and so on alone. He didn't. And it's been 6 years of marriage and she's been complaining. She's the one trying to reach out, showing the love and so on and so forth. I'm taking a different angle perspective from what Maryam has discussed. Sometimes we come into these marriages, especially men, with a culture of how we saw our mothers were subservient to our fathers. And when we come in, when the fathers come in the wrong mood, nobody in that house smiles. And when the father's happy, everybody's happy. And what I was saying at the beginning of this session is we have to be careful what we grew up observing. Just because they did it that way doesn't make it right. And if you have an opportunity to talk to these mothers, they will tell you it was miserable. They were not happy. But because of the stigma of the period at the time, they have nobody to complain to. Your sister has you to talk to tell you all these things. In the past, they wouldn't even tell their family members. They'll just keep it to themselves. They'll swallow it. Different cultures across Africa, the Middle East, and Asia, and so on and so forth. Your sister maybe needs to write a letter to her husband, explaining what she's going through, the hardship she's going through, the misery, the unhappiness she's experiencing, and the lack of love she feels is absent, or reciprocating of love that she feels is absent in the marriage. I want to make something clear to all of us. Kindness, love, and respect is a duty that both husbands and wives owe each other. It's an act of ibadah. We don't go by culture. Come Judgment Day, nobody would judge either the husbands or the wives based on culture or tradition. It's going to be based on the injunctions stipulated in the Holy Quran and the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We need to be very careful not to make wives and husbands miserable in their matrimonial homes. We need to know these rights and responsibilities. We need to work on them. It's not pick and choose. It's do what is an obligation on both of us. And if a spouse is miserable, is crying, is reaching out for help, what essentially is happening is that the other spouse is denying her rights. One would answer to Allah. I want that clearly understood. It's not how I grew up, how my mother treated my dad. No, it could have been totally wrong. Yeah, so it's important, please, we're mindful about that.
I want to add just a curveball to what we've both said already, and that is, there is the possibility that his heart has been stolen.
Yeah.
And that's just a reality sometimes.
He may not be there.
He may not be there. And she can look in any way. She can look as stunning, smell as good as can be. But if his heart is stolen, there is nothing she can do, to make herself look attractive because something is taking him elsewhere.
But there needs to be a conversation. There needs to be a dialogue. Let everybody be honest and say what is wrong, what is not going right in this relationship.
Exactly.
Nobody. Maryam likes to say oppression
is worse.
Allah said oppression is worse than death. And if a person is in a marriage and is feeling oppressed because of lack of love, there's a need to address that. It's not fair. I just want to say it's not fair, whether it's the husband going through it or the wife going through it.
And I think it's a hadith, right? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's a
hadith. Anyway, yes, Ibrahim.
Thank you so much. May Allah is the situation for this.
I mean,
Abdul Hakim, you had your hand
We can't hear you.
Sorry, Abdul Hakim has had his hand up for a while, so I want to unmute so that he can ask his question. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa barakatuh.
Please, I'm joining in from Ghana.
MashaAllah.
Upper East region, Zebila, closer to Sankasi, Togo. I'm seated here with my wife, Samira.
MashaAllah.
We've been married for the past 5 years.
Alhamdulillah.
I think a lot of the progress we have made has come from the blessings of Sister Maryam and a wonderful husband.
Thank you very much.
in the period of 5 years, we've seen it all. As in life being a hell, calling one a husband and a wife. But mashallah, things have gracefully changed, and maybe that is how we can now sit together. Okay, so my first question is, we've been having some little debate over one or two things that we want to do as a family. And well, fortunately, both of us are nurses. I'm trying to upgrade myself to do medicine, and she is also trying to get to school probably come early 2021 next year, inshallah. So our first question is, do you have, and that goes to both of you, Mr. and Mrs. Maryam Lemu, do you have a house help?
Hold on.
Sorry. I've heard you the other way around. Sorry.
Okay, continue. All right, continue.
Okay.
You were saying?
Do you have a house help? And would you advise that for others? So there are 3 questions, and I want so that it will inform.
First question, do we have a house help, and does he advise?
Okay. We do. Before we had the house help.
Sorry. Abdul Hakim, can you please ask all your questions? So
Okay.
that we can take it at once, and then
Okay.
other people
So
can also
second
go.
question is,
Inshallah.
how do you make time to have your Islamic studies as an entire family?
Make time, Islamic study.
Then the third question is, shyness is an Islamic virtue. How then do you develop a shy person to overcome it and commit more energy to face the crowd in terms of public speaking?
I'd like to start by answering the first question. Today, alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed us with the means to have house helps to help us. Before the house helps, Abdul Hakim, I did 90% of the house chores. I cooked, I cleaned, I did the vacuuming, I did the laundry, I rocked the babies, I cleaned their butts. I was called captain of the pooper scooper squad. I fed them. And so no house help, I did it. And I was working 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. So anytime Maryam decides to do anything in the house, I will tell her to make the niyyah to do sadaqah for me. I hope that is clear, right? You understand what I'm saying there? Aha.
Because it's not my obligation.
It's not her duty to cook, clean, tidy the house, dust, do the laundry. No. Islam does not stipulate that a woman is supposed to do that. That is not part of the injunction of marriage. Many of the fuqaha said, have concluded that anytime a woman decides to work in the house, it is private. It's like she volunteered. Yeah, she volunteered to do it. In the event that both of you are in the same career and there are challenges for you, Abdul Hakim, to provide those things, you can have a discussion, you can negotiate and see how you can take turns. But please be sure to let your wife know it's not an obligation. It's a sadaqah to you.
Yeah.
And then
with regard to house help.
With regard to house help,
if it would make life easier and you can afford it, why not? Because obviously those are part of the things that if economically we can make things more comfortable for us.
Very quickly, there are two narrations. Fatima radiallahu anha, the wife of Sayyidina Ali, had challenges in house chores, and she went to her father, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, asking for his support in assisting her with the house help. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "I'll tell you something better. Go and recite Alhamdulillah 33 times, Subhanallah 33 times, Alhamdulillah 33 times, and Allahu Akbar 34 times. That is better for you." But Umar radiallahu anha's daughter, who was married to Zakaria, went to her father asking for the same favor, that Zakaria is broke, he's poor, he doesn't have money, and they're having challenges. And the next day, Umar radiallahu anha sent her a house help. So you can see, but clearly it's subjective, but the fuqaha said in all their studies that the wife, and Rasulullah didn't say, Fatima, go back and do the chores. He just gave her this advice. But Umar radiallahu anhum sent a maid, a house help to his daughter to help her with the house chores. And Rasulullah didn't frown at upon that. But it's important we understand there is nowhere in Islam. There's an Arabic terminology called urf, which is called culture. Mm-hmm. If the culture is so stringent, is so structured that it does not allow the man to do the house chores, it's a question of issue of negotiation between husband and wife, so that you understand that I would need you help here, please help me. And the wife will do it as sadaqah for the husband. But it's not a duty upon the wife to do those things.
With regard to your second question, when do we have time for Islam, not increasing in knowledge of Islam or Islamic circle or whatever one may want to call it? There are so many things that we can only say Alhamdulillah for. One of those is technology, how it has accorded us so much on the tips of our fingers. Yeah. Scholars from all over the world are able to come to us in our homes, in our phones, on our bed. While we're lying on our beds, we can be learning and growing. He and I, every single day, we share hadiths and quotes and lectures that we come across, even if we are apart. In other words, I could be in the office, and if I check on my phone, I will see a link that he has sent me, or vice versa. If we are in the home though, we do acts of ibadah together. It's just a tradition. It's a part of our family culture. We did it with the kids when they were at home. So we always pray together. Even during Ramadan, there's a mosque right outside our front door, but he stays to lead us in prayer in Taraweeh. In spite of the fact that yes, there's a lot of reward for that. But what's that?
Even that is considered congregational
Even
prayer.
this is considered congregational prayer, him leading us, because it makes it the bond stronger. And we hear what each other is praying for. So we always make dua aloud, whether it's just the dua or actually praying for this person or that person and wishing for this and that for our partner or our children. We always do that aloud and we take turns doing it. So it's just to make it a culture and a tradition, and then it ends up happening naturally.
Over time.
But you have to be conscious and deliberate about it. We've got 6 areas that we make sure our life revolves around, and spirituality is number 1. So we make sure that Allah first, like he said. And then did you understand the question?
Yeah, you said, how do you help somebody who is shy to overcome public speaking fears, right? First and foremost, you practice with your loved ones. And today on technology, you can get a lot of advice on YouTube and so on and so forth. But one of the things we do is when we record each other, we critique one another. And you want to get realistic critique from somebody who understands public speaking. If you don't, YouTube is a good place to start. But if you know somebody who's a very good public speaker, and they are willing to help you, you can set the phone, send it to them. And then there are courses like Maryam is saying on YouTube that's free that you can get into.
And also, I think if it's about speaking up, not so much being shy of being on stage, but more they are not so outspoken, they're not so assertive or an extrovert. I think you need to work on their self-esteem more than anything.
Yes, confidence.
Be their cheerleader, their biggest, the captain of their supporters club. And you find over time, they're able to start feeling like, for me, I always say my parents gave me the foundation, but my husband gave me the wings to fly, because he's always been there. I would be very insecure. I would have a lot of self-doubt. I would always say, I'm sure this will happen, or I can't do. And he'll always say, Maryam, give it a shot. What have you got to lose? And that's why I'm where I am today, because he's been just pushing, like, hey, try it. You've got nothing to lose. And if I mess up, he's very kind in how he, comforts me, because I beat myself up really, really bad. I'm very self-deprecating. So he's like, very self-critical. And he will be the one to say, it's not as bad as you're making it sound. You have no idea. There is nobody else that can do it as good as you, and things like that. So it just gradually gives me more confidence over time. Yeah. So next question, please. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much for answering this question. The Salahuddins. No, that's not what we're doing. I'm going to unmute Nafisa Umar so that you can ask your questions. Assalamu alaikum, Nafisa.
Walaikum assalam.
Please go ahead.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Good evening.
Good evening, Nafisa. Nafisa, sorry, could you speak a bit louder?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. This is not really a question. I think it's more of a request. I've been trying to reach out to Auntie Maryam for like months now. I've sent a couple of DMs via Instagram, and I didn't get a response. So please, I would really like to
see at gmail.com. After this, send me an email. The good thing is he has access to all my emails because it's on his phone as well. And because of how many things I'm doing, I wear so many multiple hats. He then calls me and says, check this email on this date. It's really urgent. And sometimes he responds on my behalf. But he sends it to me to check, and I'll say, you know what, due to time, I can't add, but it's perfect. That's exactly what I would say. So please, I am so sorry. Honestly, you're not the first and won't be the last. I just have a thing that because I don't want to spread myself so thin, and I want to make sure when I'm somewhere, I give my all. When I'm home, I actually make sure that I don't get into social media like that, and I give the family their time. So I do set certain times, but there's a limit to how many I can do when my inbox is just flooded and my DMs are flooded with messages. I can only do so many. I apologize, but I promise you I'll do my best. You can still send me a DM again on my social media handles, whether
I
it's
prefer
Instagram.
the email.
The email is safer because
yeah.
he gets to see it and respond.
Yeah, email.
Sometimes you'll see a message on Facebook and say, Maryam, there's a message on Facebook you need to respond to, but it gets overwhelming.
Yeah.
What's your
Send an email, maryamlemu@gmail.com.
Okay, thank you.
Inshallah. Sorry, Nafisa.
Thank you, Nafisa. Rafiat Adebukola, I'm going to unmute you now so they can ask a question. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa barakatuh.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity, the host and everyone in the house. I have a question. I have two questions. The first one is, I want to know, when is it okay to draw a line between your ego and walking out of a marriage? As in, when is it like, when can I put it as, when is it okay to believe is time for you to walk out of a marriage? Or, because I don't know, because sometimes you might see it as an ego, then sometimes you must see it as is like high time you walk out of a marriage. So I don't know where to draw the curtain between ego and walking out of a marriage. I don't know if you can get a little light. Yeah.
Okay. So
no, she has two questions. Is that the end of the question?
Yeah, the second one here is, if you have if you're living, like if a couple are not, they are not separated, but they are living apart. As in, like, the wife and the kids are abroad and the husband is like back home. So for how long can you, what are the things you can consider you need to put more in that kind of marriage to make it work? Because there are some issues when you are not like together to discuss it and you are miles apart. There is, I believe there's a little you can do to stay up in that kind of marriage. It depends on both parties really, but when one party is drifting away and the other one is trying to put in a lot of effort. My second question still goes back to the first one, really, if I can see. So that's like I think this is the first question that is the basic thing. That's the basis of the question, really.
Okay, if I've understood you correctly, it's like, when should I call it? When is it time to call it quits? Over the years, I've always said, you put in your all, you give 110% into a relationship. You commit, and you commit for life. Have this long-term, I'm in this till death do us part mentality. However, on the condition that you do get something in return, because that's why you got married. You had expectations, and marriage can be a beautiful place. Marriage can create stability. It can create that peace, contentment, tranquility. The first question we were asked, and we answered was, we come home to our buddies, we come home to our best friend, the person we can be ourselves around. And if you are not able to get that, then definitely you need to start looking in and asking yourself, why am I in this relationship? Not to selfishly say, what am I getting out of it? But really, you can't be putting in your all and not getting anything back. I mean, that's not what marriage is meant to be. And that's not marriage in Islam. You're not meant to be in a relationship where you are broken. where you are being persecuted or oppressed.
Or not being appreciated.
Or not being appreciated. You're not meant to be in a relationship where Allah witnessed your union and then there's infidelity. I mean, that is not what marriage is meant to be. Your home is not a hotel where they can come and go as they please and a revolving door. And if this is the flavor of the month is another hotel, they go there. That's not what marriage is about. So if you find you are decreasing in value,
Yes.
you're depreciating, you are losing your identity, you're losing your self-worth, for me, that's when it's a good time to say, you know what?
Draw the line.
Draw the line. If you find that you are being broken economically, emotionally, psychologically,
Yes.
and physically, when it gets dangerous, definitely you need to run and seek for help. And the person has to show signs that they are ready to change genuinely, that they are sincere, and you see the effort. Some people leave and they're separated, they go to their family homes, then family get involved and they speak to this person, they say sorry, and you come back into the home and then you find they're no different, or they're back to their old ways.
Yeah.
At that point, you do need to make a decision. But I always say, do istihara for whatever big decision, especially these kind of things that are life-changing. And they can be life-shattering. Divorce, as we said, can be devastating. Definitely ask Allah for guidance in the decision you end up taking, but do everything in your power to make it work until you see no other way out. Then you consider, and that includes asking for intervention. Seeking someone to come in and also do sulhu, try and broker peace and talk to your spouse.
The only thing I want to add there is whenever we bring people in to broker peace, they shouldn't be biased.
Yeah, neutral.
Neutral
They have
people,
to be neutral.
knowledgeable people, and people who will keep that information with the strictest of confidentiality.
Yeah.
Not to go about broadcasting. I just spoke to Maryam and Saeed, their life is miserable, they're fighting, and so on and so forth.
Exactly.
So these are important things. But the ego part is critical. I joke about when I leave the house as Saeed. It doesn't matter what the trappings are outside, what responsibilities, what job titles are outside. When I'm coming back, I hang the ego on the fence of the house and I come back in as Saeed, not this title, that title, and so on and so forth. Because the home is where you are with your friend and your loved ones and your confidant, your buddy, your best friend, and so on and so forth. And that's what we should all aspire for. But what makes it challenging these days with the pandemic, with the lockdown, with these distant marriages, it complicates things.
Yeah.
Now, Maryam I wanted to talk a little bit.
I will.
Yeah, a little bit on what to do
in distant marriages,
marriages
Yeah.
to keep the love alive, to keep the marriage going.
It's very hard, it's strenuous on the relationship when you're not together, but you have to be creative. And what I love is, again, technology has accorded us the opportunity to do live. So like my husband and I, it doesn't matter where we are, even sometimes within town, he'll do a live video call to me. He checks on me throughout the day, and that culture doesn't stop, and neither do I. Stop checking on him throughout the day. I swear he stalks me, because sometimes 5-6 times a day, yes, he's calling. But when we are distant, whether I'm out of town or out of the country or vice versa, we do video calls. We also do video recordings and we send each other. And these can be very intimate ones as well, because you want to try and make sure you're top of your spouse's mind. We send sensual sexting messages to one another. And these are also things that keep the spark going, the flame burning. So you have to be creative, but technology, unlike before, we didn't have opportunities to see one another live and be able to see expressions. Text messages are cold unless you're using it for intimacy. Mm-hmm. So you can't tell the tone, you can't tell if they are sad. Whereas if you're able to see their face, if you know your spouse well enough, then you should be able to detect if there's something going on, if there's something bothering them or weighing them down, or you share in the joy if it's something good that they're going through. So I know time is running out. It's almost Maghrib.
May Allah make it easy for them.
Amen, amen.
May Allah make it easy. I saw one of your videos on YouTube. There was one where you said that men are like physically, like men's sexual needs are like physical, and women are more like emotional. And then I thought, oh, so how do people in marriages? So there was something you said in the video where you said, I think you said, look out for your spouse's sexual fantasies and see how you can fulfill them. And the way I was watching the video, what came to my mind is like, if you do have these fantasies, how do you share with your spouse without looking like you're the one leading prayers in the house now? What are you now talking about? Yeah. So and that was what came to my mind. Maybe you can give advice on that, particularly for some of us that are just going into this marriage journey. And then I would unmute Mashood Masha so you can ask your question.
Okay.
Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has there are descriptions about how romantic he was with his wives. Yes. And there is a particular hadith that said even during her menstrual cycle, they will be intimate. She would just need to cover her midsection and they would be intimate. Now, if that can be said about Rasulullah, I mean, it doesn't matter how many people you lead in prayer, you should be able to have that conversation with your wife and to talk about it. And there's another hadith where it said, when a man admires a woman outside and gets excited, he's advised to quickly go home and meet his wife and satisfy his intimacy needs. And when you see, my brand, there's something I like to say. When we are high and mighty, we're chairmen, we're managing directors, we're powerful people, but we go naked before our spouses. I mean, what's there, in all honesty, that one will not be able to discuss with the person that knows him the most, which is one's spouse? And when you remember, I said, fulfilling the intimacy needs of one another is an act of ibadah. So as you pray and you lead people in prayer, understand that aspect of the relationship is also an act of ibadah. So you have to develop the system of communicating, of expressing your desire and tell your wife, or your wife to tell you. And you, the husband, are really the one to say, this is a duty upon me as it is upon you. So be comfortable about talking to me about what your needs are. And I just want to quickly to add for the brothers, it's been scientifically proven that it takes 2 to 8 minutes for men to climax. It takes women an average of 8 to 20 minutes to climax. So brothers have to learn to be patient. Those of us with big amala tummies and poundo tummies have to go work out, be fit, and be sure we're able to last, and we give our wives the intimate, the satisfaction that they need in a marriage. We need to be fit. And I'm being very realistic. We need to work out. We need to be fit to be able to satisfy their needs. It's a duty on the men. But most often culture, I mean, men just go have their intimacy needs, they turn around, they go to sleep. That's not the way it's supposed to be. Yeah. We're supposed to talk to them and ask them what they want, how they want it. As long as everything we do is halal, it's okay for husbands and wives to discuss their intimacy needs.
And be adventurous and be creative.
Yes, yes.
If intimacy is allowed to become stagnant and boring and monotonous, it's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
We've been dealing with a lot of issues to do with sexual frustration in relationships.
Yeah, a lot of counseling.
Yeah, and you find many people, because of social media and too much access, they have access to pornography, they have access to seeing a lot of things that ideally they should only see in their spouse. Now, these create fantasies which manifest themselves, and unfortunately, if your spouse cannot bring those fantasies to life, you find the curiosity starts for them to seek fulfillment elsewhere.
That's a danger.
If they don't go elsewhere, they end up going into things like masturbation, which is another monster in itself. For men, it causes erectile dysfunction, it causes insensitivity, it causes watery semen, and for women, disgust, this feeling of self-loathing, self-hatred, and so on. And it happens to both. So the damage, the long-term damage of not fulfilling and not talking and making sure both are equally satisfied can be devastating on the relationship. We counseled someone who was married for 13 years, and the woman said she had never climaxed once in that entire time. It was only when she moved to another city and her friends were talking about it that she found out there was even such a thing. And then she got curious and started asking questions. And since she knew her husband wasn't going to give it to her, she started fulfilling it, unfortunately, with another man.
That's a danger.
Yeah.
That's a danger.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I have a lot of nuggets that I've picked that
Could you speak louder? Sorry.
Sorry. So sorry. Because I'm not using my headphones, I don't know when I'm screaming and when I'm not, and I don't want to be yelling.
You can scream.
I don't want to be yelling into people's ears. Thank you. I've picked a lot of nuggets that inshallah would help me and help a lot of people on this call as well. Someone just sent me a question about inter-religious marriages. What should people that find themselves dating Christians or Christians dating Muslims do when they get in this situation, particularly because it seems like men are allowed. So like Muslim men are allowed to marry Christian women, but Muslim women aren't allowed to marry Christian men. And people that have now found themselves in this situation, what should they do?
Well, with regard to that, I know a lot of people are puzzled, like, why should it not be allowed both ways? Yeah. Well, it's actually to protect the woman. Yeah. Let me give various scenarios. You're married to a non-Muslim man, and he wants you to serve pork and serve alcohol in the house. You as a Muslim, obviously, those are things that you cannot do. You're not supposed to do. How do you go around that? And then you have children. Will you stop your children from eating pork and drinking the alcohol or whatever else that we have been forbidden from doing? Then when it comes to issues to do with the Sharia protects the mother. If she has children in the event of a divorce, she has rights to the children. Yes. But if your spouse is from another religion, you have to just accept whatever their courts say his entitlements, because Sharia doesn't apply. The rule doesn't apply to him. The rule of Sharia only applies to you. So you can't take him to a Sharia court if he's not a Muslim and say he has not allowed you to go with your children. The same thing applies to do within the event of death. A Muslim woman cannot inherit. Well, it depends on their laws, I would say. When it comes to inheritance.
Islam says a Muslim cannot inherit from a Christian.
Okay, a Muslim woman cannot inherit.
Any relative. If Muslim Christian relationship, a Muslim cannot inherit from Christian, and a Christian can't inherit from a Muslim.
Okay.
So there is that. But essentially, the not allowing Muslim women to marry non-Muslim men is primarily really to protect the women and the children.
And then also another thing to do with practicing the faith. If you want to raise your children as Muslims and your spouse says, I'm going to raise them as Christians, they're going to go to church, what can you do? So it's one of those things that really can become very nasty and messy later on. While you're in love, it seems okay. But when marriage settles in and reality begins and you have issues that come up, you find those could be a serious issue of contention.
And the reason why the Muslim men are allowed to marry the non-Muslim women is because it is considered they are the heads of the household, and they will basically dictate to a large degree how
What
the
happens.
children, what happens in the home and how the children are supposed to be raised, and so on and so forth. And if he raises his children as Muslims, they will inherit from him. But the wife cannot. What he would maybe have to do, that I've seen many men do, Muslims who are married non-Christians, is they give the wife a gift while they're living, because they know according to Sharia, she cannot inherit from him, but the children are okay, they will inherit from him. So one is to protect the woman, and the man is allowed because they feel he has the influence to dictate what happens in the home and how the children are raised.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Sister Nafisa, if you keep unmuting your mic and I have to mute you back, if that happens again, I would unfortunately have to put you in the waiting room. Okay. I'm going to unmute Moshood Masha. Please go ahead and ask your question. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Just first thing, Ibrahim, they're hating on the jersey. Don't mind them. Absolutely.
Don't mind them. Don't hate us.
Haters. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Saeed and Sister Maryam. It's been a pleasure listening to you. Been a pleasure watching your videos on YouTube. Very amazing. My question probably starts from where you stop with regards to the rights of women from a sexual point of view, but general with the rights of women.
Could you speak a bit louder?
Sorry, louder, please.
Can you still hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Can you hear me? Perfect. Okay. So mine is more of a statement than a question. So I've listened to several sermons from imams who seem to put a lot of pressure on women, especially in Nigeria. And they keep making statements where they make it that it's the woman's fault for a failing marriage, or it's her fault for the kids being bad, and so on. I found that these statements to be quite toxic, and they seem to perpetuate the idea that men are kings over women. How do we as a society change this, especially as it seems to be coming from scholars and imams? And it's not just peculiar to Nigeria. So how do we change it from an Islamic perspective? Thank you very much.
Honestly, Brother Mashood, I've had a problem, and I've been stating it publicly, about this tendency that our scholars tend to have in blaming or shifting the responsibility or certain responsibilities to the wives or the women. Among the rights, like we started off with, of the woman on the man, and the duty, the obligation of the man is to give the woman knowledge. And I'm talking holistic knowledge. And when we talk about wives being mothers, we forget that mothers are the first school that the children go to. They are the first teachers that a child would see. Now, when the man doesn't make the effort to educate the wife, to raise her so they grow together, they have shared values, they understand what it means and the sacrifices necessary to raise children, the failure is not that of the woman, it is that of the man. Maryam and I started discussing parenting before the children came, before we even conceived them, because we understood that as much as scholars like to say paradise is at the feet of the mother, Jahannam can be at the feet of the children if you don't raise them with the right tarbiyah and with the right education. That project, that endeavor, that goal, that objective starts with the man. It's not the woman. So when you go, you seek a woman's hand in marriage, and she leaves her father's home. This is after you've done the investigation, you've done the istihara. Then when she comes, you say, oh, she wasn't properly raised, she wasn't given the right kind of education, she doesn't have the right tarbiyah, she's not a good mother. That's not the father's fault. It's yours, it's your responsibility. You saw her, you wanted her, you saw her hand in marriage, she was given to you by her family as a wife. The moment that nikah is over, responsibilities shift from the parents to the husband. So anything she is lacking in terms of intellect, in terms of knowledge, in terms of social skills, interpersonal skills, whatever it is, It's your responsibility. And when I see these imams and scholars keep blaming the women, honestly, they're just shifting responsibility. It's an abdication of responsibility. That's not the way it's supposed to be. I don't know what Maryam wants to add to that.
I think you've said it all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think we have about 10, 15 minutes more to go. So the question I want to ask is...
Sorry, could we hear you a bit louder?
Is he an Arsenal fan, or what fan is he? Spurs or what? Because he's not a good fan. He doesn't
Is
he Gunners? Okay.
Oh yeah.
I can't be a Tottenham fan. We can no, we don't. No.
Okay. So continue. No, Rex, calm down. Continue.
That one touched me. It touched me. That was no.
I'm sorry.
He knew exactly what he was doing when he said what he said.
Sorry, calm down. Let's be calming down, I think.
I didn't mean it. Sorry.
Oh my goodness.
So how should one deal with a cheating spouse?
Wow. That's a loaded question. Shoot him.
Here's the thing. Oftentimes, on a serious note, I hear women say he's cheating on me. No, he's not cheating on her.
He's cheating himself.
He's essentially cheating himself.
Yeah.
Zina is a kaba'ir. It's considered a major sin. Some scholars rank it number 3 after shirk, taking of a human life. Some scholars have brought it down to number 7, some to number 10. The act of zina is such a major sin that if it is a man who had intercourse with another man's wife, the sin is equivalent to taking half of all the sins in the world and giving it to that man. It's no joke. It's a major, major offense. When you even think about zina, you don't do it, and you have intimate relations with your wife or one of your wives, we are actually rewarded for having intimacy with our spouses. And when the Sahaba asked Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, why? How can we get pleasure and then be rewarded for the pleasure? Rasulullah said, you have the option of committing a sin with another woman that's not your wife, and you didn't. So Allah rewards you for it. Zina is no joke, but the key thing that we should be concerned about, when I earlier mentioned Surah Al-Baqarah and I said we are sutura to one another, garments for one another, is a wife does her best to make sure she satisfies her husband's intimacy needs. So does the husband. That's why, Brian, it's so important we have that conversation. Because sometimes, like Maryam said earlier, when those needs are not being met, that is what causes people to start looking elsewhere. Whether it is the wife cheating, having zina, or the husband doing it. So it's important, both of us, in protecting one another, we have these conversations so that we do not offend Allah. The dangers of zina in the world, before we go to the hereafter, wherein the punishment is huge, it causes poverty.
Yeah.
It is reason for poverty because you keep making money, you keep losing money, maybe to those women, but money never stays. It brings shame because when people know you have that reputation, that's how they will see you. And the shame doesn't stop with just you. It goes to your wife or wives and your children, and people will talk about it. There's the potential of disease, sexually transmitted diseases, which could lead to death. And ultimately there is this burden of carrying this shame around that just affects everybody. So the implications are dire, but the most dangerous part of it is the punishment that would come Judgment Day, if one does not seek Allah's forgiveness and repent. But I don't know what Maryam wants to add to that.
No, I think Saeed has said everything with regard to that, because infidelity is number one that we deal with more than any other counseling cases.
Yes.
You find one spouse is not faithful to the other. And I think I do though, try to make sure I confirm whoever calls to complain, whether it is the gentleman who calls us and says his spouse is not faithful or vice versa, is did you chase them away?
Yes.
Was there something you didn't do right? I'm not saying it's any justification, absolutely not. They're gonna have to answer to Allah for that. However, you do need to look in the mirror. Are you appealing? For women, I do a lot of intimacy courses, private intimacy courses, only women, where we talk about, how do you keep yourself clean? How do you keep yourself fresh, from your hair all the way down to your toes, and make sure you are appealing. But Saeed and I, when we talk, we say, you know what, it's also part of the responsibility that a man has to make sure he keeps himself attractive for his spouse. I know our kids growing up would observe, we both have a habit as we enter the house, we go take a shower, because for me, I just feel I'm washing all the days, jagwala away, and then I'm ready to face my husband. And whatever may come in between. But I always want to make sure I'm fresh for him, and he does the same for me. He's very, very, very sensitive about making sure he's very clean. So during the day, our kids would sometimes see their dad. It's a weekend like today. We are not going anywhere, but they will see maybe during midday, he's looking like he just took a shower and he just went and washed his face, cleansed himself, and he's smelling good. And I know our youngest son would just look at him and say, oh, Baba, ho, Mama, did you see that? Did you see that? But we made sure, because we're always teaching them what they should replicate, that they notice, because we want them to learn and do the same. I'm constantly working on trying to watch my weight and not just watch the scale, but literally try to keep fit so that I'm always keeping myself to the way he wants me to be. He always says, Maryam, as long as you're healthy, but it's not good enough. I want to make sure I look sexy for him. He's always working out. And
there was a time I was overweight, and I don't know if people saw this, and my stomach was so big, and she told the whole world that my stomach was my GPS. Wherever my stomach went, that's where I went. And I
oh my God!
I had to.
Lady T is laughing. Lady T, I beg don't mind.
I was overweight, and I know I wasn't appealing, and I had to work out, and I've been working out ever since. I've maintained a good weight average since then.
It's a working process. We're both working progress, but most importantly, we're doing it together. He's never left me to say, you know what, you're on your own, and go make sure you look good for me, because there are lots of chicks out there and hot babes that I could go to. He's doing it together with me, and I see him doing the ones that I want him to do. And I really also appreciate this thing, because I've become very sensitive to smells. And wallahi, one thing I really appreciate is an example of what happened just yesterday, where he wore his kaftan, he looked really, really nice. I told him he looked so good. I said, you look sexy. And then my nose now got a whiff of the perfume he was wearing, and it made me feel nauseous. And I managed, but before midday, I said to him, I said, Saeed, please, could you change your kaftan? Because the perfume is really strong on that. And I would love, before I could turn, he had already changed for me. And I really appreciate, because these are the little gestures that make your spouse know that, you matter to them. You matter so much that they're ready to do what it takes to make you happy. And that's what marriage is about.
And it didn't matter how nice it smelled for me. That wasn't the issue.
Exactly.
What mattered to me was it didn't smell nice to her, and I wanted her to be comfortable. So I took it off. I mean, it's as simple as that. It's not a difficult thing. You just took it off. I just quickly want to say something, Ibrahim, about what you said. For those of us who have transgressed, who are having problems with extramarital affairs and zina, there is a dua. And you say, oh Allah, I seek from you guidance, piety, chastity, and contentment. Let me be content with my wife. Allah, let me love her. Let her be the most beautiful thing for me. Let me not see anything else outside. I used to pray, Brian, that any woman next to me is a man who is not my wife. So any woman that I see is a man. As long as it's not my wife, it's a man. So I'm not attracted. And because there are times we have to do some psychology on our own minds. You know, we are attracted to women, but what do we do to stop that? We know we are. We know we have that fault. So what do? Do we just succumb like animals? No. Allah gave us the brain to think and to use it. And there are prayers, but there's also psychology. And what I do is, as long as it's not my wife, any woman here, as far as I'm concerned, though, is like me. So that way, my mind doesn't go there. You know? Anyway, I hope some of us can use that.
That's a good hack. That is actually a very interesting hack. That's a very interesting hack. I wonder how my female friends will react when they ask me how they look, and I say, "Well, you look like."
Brian, please speak up. Sorry, Brian.
I was saying that that's a good hack. That's an interesting hack. That I wonder how my female friends will react when they ask me how they look, and I say, "Well, you look like a man to me."
You get a black eye. You keep it as mind games.
You keep it inside.
Well, you look like a man. I can't tell you why you look like a man, but I assure you.
Lipstick is like a man's lipstick. Who knows what you whatever works.
That works. May Allah make it easy. I think we have time for just one question because it's almost time for Maghrib in Nigeria. I don't know if Rafiat wants to go again because I see your hand up, or if there's anybody else that wants to ask the last question. So Rafiat, I'm just gonna unmute you if you want to go for the final question. Otherwise, I would ask the final question. Okay.
Can I ask the final question?
Absolutely. Thanks for unmuting yourself.
I've been raising my hand since, and
Sorry, your hand was paining you, so you dropped it because I did. Oh, now there's so many hands up.
Anyway, congratulations on being married. I wish you all the best. I wish you. I wish when the honeymoon phase is off, you get down to business. Anyway, this question I'm going to ask. I want to ask Maryam and Saeed, how do you fight effectively? Because this is a thing that has not been thrashed out well. We all go into marriage and lovey-dovey, but nobody really addresses how we should fight. Like, I know there are rules of war and engagement. How can we do that effectively?
Excellent question. I had to learn the hard way because I was a bumbling idiot when I got married, and my approach was very, very ineffective. I mean, if there's ever a book that should be written, How Not to Fight, I would be the author of that book because I've tried all the techniques and I know the ones that didn't work. I think the most effective was getting to the stage to control my emotions and be able to say, Said, something is bothering me and I want to talk, without just going straight into the fight. Giving him a chance to know that there is something weighing me down, there's something serious and important that I want to talk about. And that really transformed how we fought, because even though at first it was hard to swallow, because he could take 2-3 days, he wouldn't say anything. He wouldn't even say, I'm coming. We will talk. He just doesn't talk. Later, when I asked him, why didn't you say what was going on during the process? Or why did it take you so long, I should say? He would say, I needed to mentally get myself in the right frame of mind so that when we speak, whatever you may say that may have been a trigger does not actually make me blow up. I have to also tell myself to be in full control and to listen to understand you, not to argue, not to interrupt, but to understand. And then we can have a decent discussion. Why it helped is when he's ready in the right frame of mind, not that I come boom, 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 boom with my great weapons and I'm just shooting, in any direction with a flood of emotions and everything. It allowed him to then on his terms say, come, let's talk. I have found that to always produce a very, very good outcome. However, there's no one size fits all. I also did the letter writing, which eventually worked because that's the way my mom started. And when I asked her, what did you do? She said, oh, I wrote to your dad. But I've shared this story over and over again.
Just don't write the letter the same way you will talk when you are very upset.
Exactly.
Because the first time she wrote me a letter, she wrote me 18 pages of all the insults you can imagine in this world.
I started by saying, I hate you. I hate you from the bottom of my heart.
How does this solve a problem? You know?
So yeah, I had no filter. Anything in my mind I just said, which is why things never worked out.
Yeah.
But if you are constructive and you mentally keep your mind on your target, the big picture, the success of your marriage, that you are both on the same side. It's not win or lose, it's win-win. And you're looking out to make sure you maintain respect, maintain dignity, good adab in the manner with which you talk. As long as respect is the currency that flows, I find it has helped be a good guide, and it makes the compass of the discussion face the right qibla. So as long as with each word I speak with respect. When you are angry, it's so easy to be condescending, to be sarcastic, to be cynical. But if you find you talk and the same thing keeps repeating itself, naturally you get worn out, you get cynical, you get sarcastic. And that's where you do need to find a different approach. But to say which is the perfect method, I cannot, because your relationship is so unique. But you try different methods. Make an appointment to fight. I always say never light a match in a filling station, because it will ignite. If he's already angry, you better be the calm one. And if you're the one who's angry, we pray your spouse has the maturity to calm you down. And try and make sure they neutralize the situation to allow for a conducive relationship.
As long as the spouse doesn't say calm down, that makes people explode.
Let us be calming down.
That makes people explode. You just patiently listen, and if possible, have a notepad. Write the points down that she is stating so she understands you're effectively listening to her, you're respecting what she has to say. Even when some of those things can be a misunderstanding, they could be outrightly wrong. All you need to do is make notes and then come and explain things one by one. Inshallah, if you come up with your own system, inshallah, you will be able to fight without fighting.
Exactly.
May Allah make it easy. Whilst my wife and I were dating, sorry, I have to speak a bit louder. Whilst my wife and I were dating, one of the things that used to really, really, really frustrate me was how we handled conflict resolution differently. So my approach was, while upset, let's talk about it now, deal with it and move on. Her approach was, listen, I don't even know if I'm upset yet. I need some time to first go and process my emotions and figure out exactly how I'm feeling before I can even discuss it, which used to be very frustrating. And it was during premarital counseling with Ustaz Jubril Sabah that I then found out that how we dealt with conflict resolution was directly tied to our birth order. So there's a book called Birth Order. So like your position in the family tree.
Birth order.
Yes, your position in the family tree. And there's a book called The Birth Order, which made sense. Like people that came last, so the last kids are always very direct and they deal with things head on, and that's how it is. Like if you look at how a lot of last kids deal with conflict resolution, it's like, I want to talk about it, I'm confident, I want to talk about it, and move on and deal with it. Middle child takes some time to process their emotions, takes some time to figure out how they're feeling. They want to say the right things. They want to say, so they're more careful about how they come and say it in an argument resolution type thing, as opposed to us that, last kid in the house, just want to say it and move on and deal with it and forget it. So maybe that's a book that people should read. It explains a lot of things about how dealing with other people, how to deal with other people in life generally, and you then see that a lot of decisions that we take in terms of like career, how we deal with things, even public speaking, etc., is directly tied to our position on the family tree. So that's a book that I would recommend. May Allah bless Jubril Sawa for what he has done for me and I. I mean, I don't know if we have more time for just one more question. There's someone that hasn't asked. I don't think we do because of my grip.
And yeah, maybe one or two questions, and then we.
It's past, it's Maghrib already. Yeah.
One or two, and then we move on before it's a Shah.
I have a request. I
Pardon?
want to ask Maryam for our email address again, please.
Email address.
Okay, I'll type it in the chat box. Let me see. Okay,
Sorry,
the chat. Okay, so it's maryamlemu@gmail.com. maryamlemu@gmail.com.
All right, thank you.
Maryam with a Y.
MaryamLemu@gmail.com.
Thank you so much.
Sister Hajara Ali, yeah, you would be the final question today, inshallah. Hajara, are you there?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa barakatuh.
Mine is not a question, but just to say to Sister Maryam that I miss her since 2018. 2008 or 2007 when we meet in your school, and Mom. So I really miss you, and I miss your contact. May Mom's souls rest in peace.
Amen.
And I miss you so much. I miss your contact. I have a lot to talk up with you. I have a lot of problems to discuss with you.
Okay, Jazakillahu khairan, thank you so much. Auntie Hajara, please, if you don't mind, just send me an email so we can reconnect at the maryamlemu@gmail.com. That would be great.
Inshallah. Thank you very much.
Inshallah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Haja Maryam Lemu, Ustaz Sayyid Takuma. Thank you so much for the time, for all the nuggets. Inshallah, we'll have to bring you back, as I've said, because there were so many people trying to get in, they were unable to get in. We will do a webinar so we can admit as many people as possible. We pray that Allah increases you in all that is beneficial for you and continue to make you shining stars for the deen and source of hope for a lot of young couples. If you would, so we have a tradition where our speakers will make the final dua before we close the session. So if you will please make dua for all of us and for yourself. And if you can, please make the dua or part of it in English, that would be great.
Okay.
Bismillah.
All right. Well, Jazakumullahu khairan for having us on the show. To Tahara Collectives, may Allah bless all your efforts, your initiatives, with all those guests that have joined this session. May Allah continue to bless your unions with His rahmah, with His blessings. May Allah continue to grant you peace, happiness, contentment, and may the love and mercy that He has said He has put in our hearts, may it manifest itself, may it be personified in your relationship. May you find true happiness and contentment in your unions, those yet to be and those who are already married. And may Allah continue to put light in your heart so that you see the good in one another and raise our children in the very best manner. Jazakumullahu khairan to my better half for always supporting me in everything I do. Thank you for joining me for this session. And Jazakumullahu khairan. May Allah bless you all. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamu ala al-mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Amin.
Jazakumullahu khairan. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. Inshallah, we'll bring you back. Thank you so much for everybody that has joined. And to all the Arsenal haters, assalamu alaikum to you too.
Ghana. Waalaikumsalam warahmatullah.
All right. Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh. Bye bye, everybody.
Let's go. It's over. It's over. Now let's go and pray. Huh?